Most of what you call love is performative, conditional bullshit, or nothing at all. The performative and conditional is usually in the beginning. And then at some point, the levels of comfort in romantic relationships level out to where you can no longer maintain the performing. And for those who continue, then there becomes a level of burnout that the body pays for, first mentally and emotionally, and eventually the body pays a price for that. When you're doing things, performing in order to keep somebody, to keep their interest, to keep them interested in you, to keep you around. And very oftentimes, that's why it's not reciprocated. And while it's true that women, for the most part, get the shortest end of that stick, there are also many men who do as well. And that's because of the social constructs. All of it's because of social constructs. Because again, y'all, I'll continue to say this, there are only two identities: human consciousness and divine consciousness. When you rise back to your original state of divine consciousness, you stop performing in human consciousness. You stop living in human consciousness because you no longer perceive the world in the same way. There is only two identities: human consciousness, which is all of the social constructs formulating who you are, how you think, how you feel, and what you do. You are responding to the constructs. Your whole life is about responding to what you have been conditioned to believe, what you have been programmed to believe. How else do you think you can get a divine being who has a female uh, genital uh, assignment, living according to that and submitting to another, submitting to those that happen to have something dangling between their legs? That's part of the constructs, and religion reinforces it. For those of you who believe that government and religion have ever been separate, state and religion has never been separate. It's all been working toward the same goals. And if you are still living according to those things, then you are indeed living in a performative way. In the same way that a man whose value is determined by how much he's able to bring to the table and thinking that that makes him a high valued man, it's all social constructs. Because in divine consciousness, our value is immutable. And you never question that because you just are. You live according to your divinity, your divine value, your divine state. And you never fall into the trappings of social constructs because you have risen above it. You have absolutely transcended it. That's what I was doing those 2 years on the rooftop. That's what I was doing those 2 years on the rooftop. Transcending the human consciousness. It's so interesting to look back because those of you who have been around me, you know that my life was personal development. So I considered myself at the peak of understanding human consciousness. Having studied psychology and opted not to go the route of psychology, especially aligning with the DSM, Diagnostic Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, which I think is a load of fucking bullshit. It always has been. It was all to get you to undermine you. If you undermine self, nobody else has to. You undermine self, then you'll buy into anything. So at the peak of what I believed was the best you could get in human consciousness, in learning and following and understanding all of the experts. The more letters behind your name, the more bamboozled you are. But following the experts, including in alternatives, because my favorite person, as I was studying personal development, was Wayne Dyer, Dr. Wayne Dyer. The titles are such bullshit. He wasn't bullshit. But here's a man who got all of the letters behind his name in the world of psychology and then defied to teach it. He studied all of the greats that I consider. I considered greats then, and then even the some that I consider great now, like Neville Goddard. But when he first brought Neville Goddard, I was following everything he said until he got to Neville Goddard. And because Neville Goddard used the Bible, not necessarily scripture, there's a difference. Did you know that? Because the Bible is stolen text. It's a bunch of different, best way to describe it is like articles, a bunch of different articles of ancient text that were collected in order to control you. It's contrived in the way that it came together as scripture. Okay? When you hear scripture, you think holy text. Well, that was the whole intent. So it's not that the contents of the Bible are not relevant. It's just not relevant in the way that they want you to understand it. Did you get that? I'm just having a stream of consciousness flow right now. Because there are times when I want to share things with you and I really want to be able to share it from the heart. Instead of sitting up and letting the teacher, in me come out. I just want to share. Because heart to heart, I'm in my 50s. And have certainly had my share of experiences, and especially where relationships are concerned, because that's how we learn about ourselves, right? Is through the relationships that we have. And they start with family, y'all. And yes, I talk a lot about family, and in a space where, when you are raised and conditioned and programmed that you do not talk about family shit, even when it'll help other people, you still hesitate to talk about family shit. I'm not in that hesitating space anymore. I'm certainly not afraid of them motherfuckers. And I have as much right to talk about my experience with them as they had a right to tell me not to. But as a grown-ass woman, I get to make my own decisions. And part of why I know I came here is to, in this time of our evolutionary process, to dismantle what we believe family is. I didn't say dismantle family. I said dismantle the beliefs through social constructs that we have about family. Because as long as you are in something that is so dysfunctional and harmful and connected to it and believe that that's what you're supposed to do with these crazy ideas and beliefs like family over everything, you're fucked. You came through those people, not for those people. Now I'm only talking to the people who feel like their family is a hindrance to their progress. I felt like that from the time I can even remember, fuck. So I always knew I'd leave them. I announced to them at 12, I'll never forget that day and the looks I got from all of them. Like, who the fuck do you think you are and where the fuck do you think you're going? But I was always the little piggy who did not belong. They wouldn't understand that because we come for our individual paths and the courage that it's going to take for you if I'm talking to you, because for many of you, many of them have already turned off, so I wasn't talking to them. I'm very, very clear that most of the time when I open my mouth, then I am pruning. I'm pruning the tree, baby, because somebody clicked on because of a sound bite that got their attention. But I am not talking to the masses because I am not of the masses, baby. The space from which I speak is in my own divinity. And I am only talking to those who recognize that they are divine. And there has to be more. If you were always the little piggy who did not belong, I'm talking to you. You came in this time to return back to your divine, because that is how you rise out of the density of the programming since you got here for your entire life. So if you're tired of performing in relationships and you recognize the performance has been for an individual, no, baby, you came to live for yourself in your own divinity. But you got to rise out of the density of the programming to do that. Personal growth. I've said forever, do not neglect personal growth. And I meant that in terms of self-development. But I also only meant it in human consciousness because that's as far as I had gone until the pandemic. Thank you, pandemic. Thank you, pandemic, because you made me make so many decisions about leaving the programming and going off so I can actually hear. So I could hear. I shut everything down so I could hear. I left the country. I left everything. I left marriage. I left family, the family I was born into. I left friends. I left everything to just hear. To just hear. It was the most difficult and the most illuminating time of my life. And baby, after rising above the density and understanding that there are only two identities, human consciousness and divine consciousness, and snipping away daily at those beliefs in human consciousness, at the programming in human consciousness, and rising and transcending. It's not just about transformation, because these words are such fucking spells for starters. But the world of personal development has really used the word of transforming so much, and I did before I transcended. It's why I hesitated while using that. Transcendence is to transcend from all of human consciousness, all the shit you were programmed to believe. And that happens by alchemizing every single thought and belief that goes against your divine self. Baby, that takes time. That takes separation from the shit you need to transcend. Once you've done that, then you understand the difference in human consciousness and divine consciousness. Oh, and there is a difference. In divine consciousness, you clearly see that's where true clarity is. And the human programming no longer has a hold on you. And you will not perform for no fucking body. You don't give a fuck about none of that, I promise you. All right, that's all I got for you today. One thing I've always said now, I can continue to say at the end of everything is, it's your life, so choose it just as it is. Own it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Change it as long as you can breathe and learn and you're ready to ascend from the bullshit. It can and will get better. From somewhere out here in South America, y'all,